The 2024 NFL Draft is over, which means it's time to talk about what happened. Let's dive into the UDFAs of this class. I'm going to go over the 10 best UDFAs in this video, and we have guys as high as early 3rd round grades on this list. If you're new, subscribe to the channel as I am releasing draft content all year long. But for now, I'm Chase Keller, and welcome to the 10 best undrafted free agents from the 2024 NFL Draft. Enjoy. Kicking off this top 10, I have a not so shocking undrafted player in Memphis running back Blake Watson. While he was projected to go undrafted, I had him as a top 10 running back in this class. So let's talk about it. I personally think that Watson is one of the most explosive running backs in this class, alongside guys like Will Shipley and Ray Davis. His vision is very inconsistent, but when he sees a gap, he's able to explode and get through it fast. Honestly, he's just an all-around elite athlete who adds on with great elusiveness and speed on top of his explosive nature. His contact balance is also elite, and with his ability to absorb contact and stay on his feet, that's great, especially for his size. But his size is one of his biggest weaknesses, as being 5'9", 195 pounds won't make things easy immediately for the Memphis product. His vision is inconsistent as mentioned earlier, his play strength is pretty mediocre, and his contact balance might not translate. He also likes to run too upright. So Watson puts up some good traits, and even with those translatability concerns, I thought his athleticism was really hard to pass up. He received a mid-4th round grade on my board, good enough for 10th on this list. He recently signed a UDFA deal with the Denver Broncos. Coming into the 9th slot on this UDFA list, I have Illinois wide receiver Isaiah Williams. Williams' combine numbers may have prevented his chance at getting drafted, but the tape doesn't lie, he probably should have gone off the board. When I watched his tape, I saw a valuable slot receiver and return specialist with great explosiveness off the line who keeps through with good in-game speed that obviously didn't translate to a good 40 time. We saw how that went with Tank Dell though, as he ran a 4.5. He's a fantastic yak threat with good field vision and shiftiness to move around defenders. He's also a 3-level threat for that matter, having good ball tracking going deep and being an impactful anticipation receiver with nice alignment versatility as well. Negatively, he's a smaller receiver at 5'9", 182 pounds. His mediocre play strength allows for him to get knocked off routes too easily and takes away value as a receiver in press coverage. He also did have some concentration drops while at Illinois, but he only had 16 total drops on 305 targets. His size also takes away upside as a contested catch receiver and makes his route tree fairly small despite that aforementioned alignment versatility. So Williams is another guy that I really liked on tape, but his vitals and his testing numbers probably took away his chances at getting drafted. Despite that, he still received a mid-4th round grade and is 9th on this list. He signed a UDFA deal with the Detroit Lions. I can't believe that Miami defensive tackle Leonard Taylor III was once a projected 1st round pick, as now he is an undrafted free agent. And while his tape was a little iffy for me, I'm still shocked that he went undrafted. Teams probably avoided him because of his footwork and how he falls off balance way too often. This is likely because of his upright pad level and his tendency to just fall backwards. Even with that being said, he misses an extremely large amount of his tackles, including a career worst number of 27.8% in 2023. But with how raw and with the amount of upside that Taylor brings, I think if Mason Smith got drafted, Taylor should have as well. He's got a super explosive first step off the line that is super hard to stop if you are a center. But even then, he saw most of his success as a 3-tech rusher, with a super high pass rush win rate in that spot. His swim move is pretty deadly on top of that, but that's not all he can attack with in the pass rush, as his pass rush arsenal is pretty wide. There isn't much else to say about Taylor, but I'm still going to go about and say that he probably shouldn't have gone undrafted. He also receives a mid-4th round grade, enough for the 8th best player on this list. He signed his UDFA deal with the New York Jets. Let's stick with the defensive tackle position, shall we? Baylor's Gabe Hall is 7th on this undrafted free agent list. He's also another guy who didn't test too well at the combine, but even with those numbers, I don't think they were that bad enough to push him out of the draft completely. I say that because just like Taylor, he was one of the most explosive defensive tackle prospects in this draft class. He's able to impact as both a pass rusher and a run defender, and beginning in the pass rush, he's got a wider arsenal and especially has a great bull rush, as he uses his explosiveness to knock back larger O-linemen. In the run game, he's got good diagnostics and can deconstruct blocks at higher levels, and his play strength allows for him to push off blocks to control gaps. On the downside, he's got a leaner frame for a defensive tackle, being 6'6", 291 pounds. His combine testing wasn't great and showed that he isn't as athletic as teams are going to desire in that position. That also shows in his ability to flip his hips, which takes away upside as a run defender in the NFL. His gap control is still a work in progress, and his trigger timing is often late and he stays attached to his blocker for too long. On top of that, this is a little minor, but he can play too upright at times. Hall is a guy that I scouted later than most defensive tackle prospects, but I don't regret it as he showed a lot of upside on tape. He's the final mid-4th round grade on this list, being the 7th best UDFA. He's a Philadelphia Eagle now, as that's where he signed his UDFA deal. At number 6, I have another shocking UDFA in Maryland safety Bo Brady. I've always liked him as a draftable prospect, and even if he's polarizing, I don't see why you don't take a chance on him. As a projected 5th round selection, I saw Brady as a high upside safety prospect with a great combination of athletic and physical traits. Athletically, he's got the deep speed that carries into his vertical routes, he's got the contact balance to stay attached to physical routes, and he's got the agility to stay composed in his run tackles. Physically, he's a hard hitter when squared up with the ball carrier, and he's able to come off the edge and even make an impact there. But what goes up must come down, and he's going to be scheme specific with a lack of ability to work as a deep safety. His lower end reaction time and explosiveness gives him mediocre anticipation and limited man coverage value. He also missed 17% of his career tackle attempts, and he needs to develop a better feel for larger zones and needs to work around those at higher efficiencies. So Brady is a polarizing safety prospect who, yeah, he has some work to do, but I wouldn't be surprised if he made an NFL roster on week 1. Brady received an early 4th round grade in my books, which is enough for 6th on this list. He signed his UDFA deal with the Baltimore Ravens. I promise that this is the last defensive tackle to make this list, but Fabian Lovett Sr. out of Florida State was the best one to make it. Just seeing how high Braden Fisk went in this draft made me a little mad, as I think him and Lovett are closer than a lot of people think. I will say though that I think Lovett was a great complement to Fisk. Fisk brought the athleticism and Lovett brings the play strength. He's got a fantastic leg drive and does a great job at splitting double teams to close gaps. Speaking of the run, his gap control is actually really damn good. His wide frame at 6'4", 314 pounds allows for him to take up a lot of space and maul the gaps. On top of that, Lovett is shockingly elusive and has a solid pass rush plan. But that pass rush plan is very inconsistent, and that's what kicks off the negative side of him. He did get outperformed by Fisk on that defensive line, and it's mainly because he just doesn't see much success as a pass rusher. He often resorts to fighting at the line of scrimmage instead of finding a counter move to attack the quarterback. All around, he's just not a good pass rusher. But he's a great run defender, and that should translate over to the NFL if he falls in the right scheme. And that scheme could be the Kansas City Chiefs, as that's who landed him after the draft. He got a late 3rd round grade on my board. The fact that Penn State linebacker Curtis Jacobs went undrafted in this weak linebacker class is absolutely insane to me. He was my linebacker 5, and even if consensus had him around the 11th best linebacker, 19 of them got drafted. So how wasn't Jacobs one of them? People might not want to take a chance on Jacobs because his play strength isn't that good and he struggles to get off blocks with his hands. He's got some okay zone tendencies, and while his anticipation is good, he works best in a smaller zone than anywhere else. He also can play too hesitant, which brings potential for him to get trucked and juked out by ball carriers in the league. But on the other hand, Jacobs is one of the smartest linebackers in this class, which makes his undrafted status look even more shocking. He's got the anticipation to play well out of zone looks, and he's got the gap control to stuff the run on obvious run downs. He's got lateral ability and great flexibility to jump off upfield blocks, and overall, he's able to make an impact as both a pass defender and a run defender. Jacobs going undrafted just doesn't make sense to me, and just like Lovett, he's off to the Kansas City Chiefs on a UDFA deal. Jacobs got a late 3rd round grade on my board, turning into 4th on this list. As we get into the top 3, I have a guy who a lot of my favorite analysts liked watching, Arkansas's Dwight McGlothern. He was another projected 5th rounder that fell out of the top 257, but despite going undrafted, his skill set could make him make an initial 53-man roster. That's primarily because of his ball hawking skills. He's great at reading the eyes of the passer, and that trigger to click and close on his receiver is phenomenal as well. He's an impact in both man and zone coverage, primarily in zone, and his great footwork allows for him to recover off combo routes. Overall, teams will want those ball hawking skills at least somewhere on the roster, and McGlothern should provide that immediately. But there are reasons as to why he went undrafted, starting with his okay deep speed, as he gets beat deep way too often. That's why I said he works best out of zone. He's mediocre at covering quick releases, and he probably just won't translate well as a press corner in the league. He also needs to figure out when to pull the trigger on that full sprint going deep, as combining it with the bad deep speed, he's not going to translate well like that. So McGlothern has some issues that make it look like he should have fallen out of the draft, but his ball hawking skill set should have allowed a team to take a chance. I gave him a late 3rd round grade, which is 3rd on this list. He signed his UDFA deal with the Minnesota Vikings. In the runner-up spot on this list, I have Michigan interior O-lineman Drake Nugent. 3 Michigan offensive linemen got drafted in the 2024 NFL Draft, and Nugent was my favorite of every O-line prospect from Michigan, so I'm surprised he didn't get drafted. Nugent caught my eye immediately with his elite play strength and with his good yet inconsistent hand technique and leg drive. He's able to hold defenders at the line of scrimmage very well. He's also a fantastic situational blocker who will take advantage of mistakes, which leads to a lot of pancakes and shoving rushers off balance. On top of these, he explodes off the snap very well, and he has solid lateral ability. Negatively, he is fairly undersized at 6'2", 300 pounds. He really struggles to cover inside swims, and while he does a good job at playing close to his guards for recovery help, he will probably be locked in as a center because of his weakness, taking away versatility. And as I mentioned earlier, his hand technique is good, but it is also inconsistent. So Nugent doesn't get drafted, and while he might not translate over as a starting center, I still thought he had enough to get drafted. He got an early 3rd round grade on my board, which is enough for 2nd on this list. He signed a contract with the San Francisco 49ers after the draft. And finally, the best undrafted free agent from the 2024 NFL Draft is none other than Ohio State safety Josh Proctor. I've talked about Proctor a lot on this channel, and while I know he wasn't supposed to go that high, he probably still should have been drafted. Proctor's scheme versatility is what got me hooked right away. Ohio State runs a wide variety of defensive looks, and it's not just because Proctor was able to do all of these defensive looks while with the team, but he was very efficient in about every look. Out of cover 1, he's patient and knows when to pull the trigger. Out of halves and quarters, his anticipation is phenomenal. Outside of cover 3, he puts together some great zone transitions with teammates, and even in man, he has a good lateral ability and can avoid upfield blocks in the run. Now, I do understand that he has some very bad athletic concerns. His deep speed's not that good, and his vertical was like 5th percentile. His ball skills didn't show out in his production, but even setting production aside, he has average arm length and okay ball tracking skills. He also misses a concerning amount of tackles with a career nod of 14.4%. Proctor gets my number one spot because of his ability to play in just about every scheme and still be efficient in it. He gets an early third round grade just like Nugent did, and he gets the number one spot on this list. He signed his UDFA deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, those are my 10 favorite undrafted free agents from the 2024 NFL Draft. Do you agree with my list? What would you change? Let me know in the comments section below. Wait, are you not subscribed yet? Well, do it now. I release content like this all the time and would really appreciate your support. I'm Chase Keller from Chase Keller Journalism, and I will see you all next time.